Donald M. Nelson once said, "We must discard the idea that past routine, past ways of doing things is probably the best ways. On the contrary," he says, "we must assume that there is a better way to do almost everything." We must stop assuming that a thing which has never been done before probably cannot be done at all. End of quote. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank the newly elected executives of our party. I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Chris Mortimer, the deputy leader who just gave a fantastic speech. Our chairman, Mr. Andrew Wilson. I want to thank them for their stepping forward to represent the citizens of the Bahamas, and thank them for choosing to stand up. To my beautiful wife, Lisa, and my wonderful children, I say thank you for your unwavering support. DNA supporters, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. And I would like to personally acknowledge the presence of the mayor of North Miami, Mr. Andre Pierre, and his contingent who is here. Can you please stand, please? Thank you, gentlemen, so much for coming. I appreciate it very much. And all of you present, and indeed those of you now joining us via television and radio, I thank you as well for your continued faith and belief in this organization. It has been more than 40 years since we achieved our independence. Etched in the history books are the names of brave men and women who fought for freedom of all Bahamians. In the face of seemingly impossible circumstances, our founding fathers took a stand, and as a result, we, the people of this beautiful, beautiful archipelago, became a free and sovereign nation. But are we free? In our modern Bahamas, the fight for equal opportunity and economic freedom continue. Even now, decades after independence, Bahamians are still fighting for the right to be considered more than second-class citizens in our own country. Born from inequalities are the multitude of complex and multifaceted problems we face today. A violent crime rate that threatens our very way of life, an economic and investment model which does not work for our people, an educational system in need of a complete overhaul, and immigration policies which need clarity. Add to the mass exodus of the brightest minds in our country, young men and women who leave in pursuit of opportunity, of social progress, and of greater quality of life, and what we have is a nation on a verge of collapse. It is from this premise, ladies and gentlemen, that I want to speak to you tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, it goes without saying that every decision we make today, good or bad, will impact the lives of generations to come. As the decision makers of this era, we have an immense responsibility to our children and their children and their children's children to create the kind of Bahamas worthy of inheritance. While we ourselves may feel powerless by the many ills of our country, it is imperative that we remember power has never been wrestled from those who possess it without significant action. We must, as a people, find the collective strength to act and to act now. My fellow Bahamians, I submit to you that there is no more important reason to fight for your children and generations yet unborn. We must reclaim our power so that you may be powerful. Equally important is the role which young Bahamians play in reclaiming a sense of power for themselves. I believe that young people in this country have a clear understanding about the things that they are needed to move us forward as a country. They know that in order to get something different, to accomplish something great, we cannot do what we have always done. To the young men and women of this country, I encourage you tonight to have faith. Firstly, have faith in the Almighty God. And faith in yourselves and your ability. Faith in the power you possess to affect real change. And faith in us. Have faith that a DNA government is committed to finding new and creative ways to make this country better for you. Yes. To those who said that another party could not exist in the Bahamas, let alone be a challenger to the government of the Bahamas because others have tried and failed, we say, just because something has never been done before does not make it impossible. In essence, they were saying that we were stuck with a short-sighted leadership, stuck with only two options. We are stuck in the mind of spinning wheels going nowhere fast. They said that you must choose the lesser of two evils. Can you imagine? You must choose the lesser of two evils. Well, by doing that, you are still choosing an evil. Now you have a real option. The Democratic National Alliance. I say to you, Bahamas, at times are far too serious for it to be business as usual. We cannot continue to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over. Good. Again, and expect a different result. You got to be crazy. You got to be crazy. According to Einstein. That's what he said. This was proven, at the last general election in 2012. We cannot continue down the same road and find a different destination. Tonight, I encourage you to turn from this path where mediocrity, partisanship, doubt, corruption, and social decadence are the accepted norms. Turn from this path where national pride is a term only used at independence celebrations instead of an emotion embodied through the Bahamian experience. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Miles Monroe said that vision is more important than governments, and that the purpose of a government is to lead its people to the fulfillment of the national vision. From its inception, the DNA movement has been guided by a vision of a people esteemed as the most precious resource above all natural and material resource, and the nurturing of our intellectual and creative brilliance will help us become a genuinely democratic, economically prosperous, and socially mobile 21st century nation. You want to know what the DNA is all about? That's what the DNA is all about. Simple. It takes the unified will of the people to truly propel us forward, upward and onward. Therefore, Bahamians, the ball is in your court. Your court. Your court. The ball is in your court. As to where we go as a nation, you are the one who will have to make that determination as to whether you wish the status quo to remain. You know the saying, if it's going to be, it's up to me. We in the DNA, we're doing our part. We in the DNA are here standing against all odds because we truly want to see better for this country. It seems that foreigners appreciate and see the great potential we have as a country more so than we as Bahamians. And for those persons who criticize the DNA's endeavors for a better country, I am reminded of Theodore Roosevelt's infamous words that has now become one of my favorite quotes. And it goes like this: it is not the critic that counts. Let me say that again. For those of you who like to criticize persons who are trying to do good, you do not count. Not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by the dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, yes, we make mistakes, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who actually strives to do the deed, who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, Chris, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place and our place will never be with those cold and timid souls who never knew victory nor defeat. We are going as the DNA, we're going to dare greatly. Ladies and gentlemen, the Democratic National Alliance recognizes that our present system of governance is not working in the best interest of Bahamian people. The party understands that the system is in need of reform to ensure the inalienable right of the people to be participants in the governance of their country. To restore the people's faith in the government, the Democratic National Alliance proposes to put in place the necessary checks and balances and the types of reform that will make government more participatory, more transparent, and more accountable to the people whom we seek to serve. As your government, you hear me? I said, as your government. The DNA's first piece of legislation will be a proper Freedom of Information Act to allow for public access to information free from government intimidation and uncompromised by government preference. We will cause there to be an amendment to the Constitution to limit the powers of the Prime Minister, to safeguard against abuse of power. Legislation will be enacted to limit the length of service of the Prime Minister to 2 terms. And 2 terms only. This indeed is reflective in the DNA's constitution, where the leader of the party cannot be the Prime Minister for more than 2 terms or 10 years, whichever is longest. We will create a fixed date for national and local elections. And local government will be introduced to the island of Providence together with a manager for downtown Bay Street. There will be established constituencies that can only be changed according to international criteria. There must be an amendment to the Constitution by way of a referendum to allow for the creation of a recall system for non-performing members of Parliament. Look here, let me just say something though. This ain't new, We said this from 2011. For those of you who may say, we're trying to say something else, we said this from our inception. We, the DNA. And we will require all members of Parliament within 6 months of coming to office to submit to Parliament a 5-year development plan for their respective constituency, inclusive of programs and projects to be undertaken during the term. You've heard it before, but we see what's going on today. We will move towards an independent Attorney General. And you know what? We will give consideration to the abolition of the Senate. Waste of time. And the reduction of parliamentarians to 21. We must strengthen and enforce the Public Disclosure Act and create and enforce a code of conduct for public officials. The implementation of the Whistleblowers Act will be introduced under the DNA government, together with the implementation of anti-corruption legislation, one being the Prevention of Corruption Act. We could deal with you. We could deal with you. Enough is enough. There will be an office of an ombudsman to act on behalf and in the best interest of the people. A watchdog for the people against the government. For far too long, the people of the Bahamas has been at a disadvantage when it comes to obtaining redress against a government entity. This office, as it is in first world countries, will address these concerns. There must be continued electoral reform and financial electoral reform. Indeed, automation of the electoral process is necessary to allow Bahamians worldwide voting participation. The DNA's immigration policy slogan will be contain, detain, and retain. We will contain order by investing in technology to help patrol our borders and fully equip the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. We will detain those who have broken the law and enter our country illegally. And we will retain those who have a right to be here and have contributed to our society. It is time for the Bahamas to consider a smart immigration position similar to that adopted by Singapore, Canada, and Australia. The time is long overdue to open our borders to creative individuals that can add to our economy in terms of value-added productivity and technology. A DNA government will implement an efficient immigration policy that will outline, so we all know how it works, the process of short and long-term work permit applications, annual residency, spousal permits, permanent residency, and citizenship. Persons should not have to wait months, and in many cases years, for a determination of their status. And hence the DNA will move post-haste to determine the status of persons entitled to apply for residency and citizenship. A DNA government will ensure that the Department of Immigration, like it was running when I was there, is going to run effectively and efficiently. Period. Period. There's no doubt that something must be done with persons who have been born in the Bahamas but remain, for want of a better word, stateless. This has caused irreparable damage to those persons and to the Bahamas as a whole. There are those living in this country today without being able to further their education. legally obtain a job, open a bank account, or even travel. There are thousands of people who have lived this way all of their lives in the Bahamas and have not contributed to the well-being of our country and have not been able to live a good life. Our immigration laws and policies to date have not worked, and as a result, a subculture has developed. The DNA will look at ways of immediately resolving this issue so that persons are not stateless, for want of a better word, and that they are able to become meaningful members of our society, contributing to its welfare. Can I have some water, please? Thank you. Take it and hold it. Thank you. The economy. The economy of the Bahamas is at an all-time low, highlighted by non-existent growth, high levels of public and private debt, high unemployment, and gross asymmetry of wealth. The middle class has been destroyed, and the poor have been disseminated. We are becoming quickly the haves and the have-nots. In particular, young Bahamians and Bahamian entrepreneurs have become so disillusioned, deflated, and depressed that those who can are not returning to the Bahamas or seeking to leave because they see no future for themselves in the land in which they were born. In short, the Bahamian dream of home ownership, the ability to feed, clothe, educate our children, and provide affordable health care has been taken away from us. The Bahamian dream has now become the Bahamian nightmare. And any hope of social mobility for young Bahamians has been disseminated. However, the DNA has a plan of action that will give all Bahamians the opportunity to improve their standard of living. But from the outset, I want to be upfront with you. No government, absolutely no government, can provide jobs for its citizen out of thin air. But what it can and should do is to provide an economic environment that will allow the economy to grow and flourish so that automatically more jobs and new businesses will be created, and anyone who's prepared and ready to work will have that opportunity to do so. Bahamians are creative people, and given the chance, they will create and start businesses once they have access to a better system of education and training, access to affordable capital and land, access to the same economic incentives that past and present governments have so readily offered to foreigners but deny their own people. And most importantly, the DNA will decrease the cost of living and increase. Listen to me, this pains me every day. The ease of doing business, both of which will ease the burden of the average man and small and medium-sized businesses, both of which are the backbone and primary drivers of this economy. The DNA will also put an end, listen to me, we're going to put an end to corruption, cronyism, and nepotism in government, all of which has allowed the chosen few to enjoy enormous wealth at the expense of everybody else. Everybody else. The DNA will improve the ease of doing business by increasing the efficiency of the public service so that companies can be formed in 1 week, passports obtained within 2 days, if they If you could pay $200 or $400, whatever devil it is, to get passports within 2 days, we can make it where you don't have to pay, but we can make sure that people work to do it, to get you out there. Passports within 2 days, new work permits within 4 weeks, and renewals of work permits within 2 weeks. There will be a complete overhaul of the registry department, the passport office, and the road traffic department, all of which will be provided with the necessary equipment and staffed by efficient, honest, and customer-friendly personnel who will be there to provide service to all customers. I need some water again. Sounds good. All right, Bahamians will no longer, ladies and gentlemen, have to offer bribes or free lunches in return for services rendered. Indeed, there will be a whistleblower system in place that will allow customers to report any corrupt activities by public officials working in these departments. This foolishness must stop. Things are also going to be changed in the business license section of the Ministry of Finance. You hear me? See my mummy right there. She deal with them every day. Business license fees will be based on net income and not gross income. My God, how could you do that to a business? Let me repeat that. Business license fees, Mr. Chairman, you listening? Will be based on net income, not gross income. You can make $1 million and don't make money, but you got to pay on $1 million. That don't make sense. The turnaround time will be no longer than 10 days, and there will be zero tolerance for bribery of any description by the various business license inspectors, who will do the job that they are being paid to do. And yes, real property taxes will be paid by all, including politicians, their families, cronies, friends, and lovers. No longer will they be allowed to hide behind company names or be able to have the Minister of Finance intervene on their behalf to allow them not to have to pay their bills. The Bahamas sovereign debt has recently been downgraded to one notch above junk bond status. One of the first pieces of legislation that the DNA will enact is a Fiscal Accountability and Responsibility Act. This act will forbid government from borrowing more than 15% of the government's previous year's income. No more of that wasted government borrowing. Secondly, the DNA will establish a national procurement agency that will be responsible for the purchase of every item purchased by all government agencies. This agency will adhere to international standards and practices as advocated by the International Development Bank, which some 8 years ago, who estimated that government could save up to $300 million a year if such a unit were established. This, combined with the legislated code of conduct for parliamentarians, which would prohibit them from participating in any government contract, would eradicate the rampant corruption that has taken place over the last 40 years that has enriched the politicians and helped swell the national debt. Any politician who finds his hand or her hand in a cookie jar will be prosecuted. Period. Period. Too much of this foolishness going on. The DNA will also reduce the size of government. And as I said, the number of constituencies will be reduced to 21. There will be a freeze right now on hiring in the public service, and there will be a review of all of those special purpose consultants who have been hired over the past 4 years to determine the need for their continued employment. Also, promotions in civil service will be based on meritocracy and not favoritism or the sweetheart of the moment. Furthermore, no longer will ministers of government be chauffeured around in cars paid for by the government, but will be given a gas allowance to drive their own cars until such time as there is an economic recovery in the Bahamas. As well, there will be no more extravagant foreign trips where government ministers and their family, friends, and lovers. That's right. That's right. Travel first class at the expense of the Bahamian people who are suffering every day the good Lord sends and struggling just to find money for a jitney ride. The DNA government will apply pressure on the central bank to reduce interest rates in the retail banks. Had this been done 8 years ago, there would be more families in their homes today and far fewer foreclosures. Also, by lowering the rates, there would be a reduction in the cost of government's debt repayments and thus the fiscal deficit and national debt. They make this thing so complicated. Furthermore, lowering the rates would result in more investment in the Bahamas by Bahamians because they would have more money in their pockets to spend in the economy. In fact, the governor of the central bank and the minister of finance need to explain to the Bahamian people why they have not lowered the rates as happened in every other country in the rest of the world, because if they had lowered the rates, there'd be more people in their homes and more businesses still open today. Crown land is this country's largest national asset. and it belongs to the Bahamian people. However, as it stands, the Prime Minister of the day has total control over all Crown land. And believe me, they have all used Crown land to curry political favor and fatten their pockets and those of their families and friends and In fact, many politicians built their homes on Crown land. However, the biggest disgrace is that no Bahamian, unless they have political ties, can access Crown land. Indeed, no one can tell you who the land has been sold or leased or for what purpose, or indeed the financial terms of any of these transactions. Under a DNA government, all of the Crown land will be removed from the office of the Prime Minister and placed in a National Land Bureau. It will be divided into residential, commercial, industrial, farmland, wetland, and where appropriate, services. There will be a proper registry established, and the allocation process will be transparent and accountable to all Bahamians. Residential parcels of Crown land will be available for sale through a revamped Bahamas Mortgage Corporation at low rates of interest to young families to give them a head start in life. Commercial properties and farmland will be leased at market rates for those with viable business plans. No more crown land will be sold to foreigners, only leased. The DNA will regularize generation property. And I can say to you tonight, without any shadow of a doubt, that this will create instant economic empowerment for many young Bahamians, especially on the Family Islands. The DNA will also implement a land registry system and abolish the Quieting Act that has allowed the few to steal the land of many for far too long. DNA will lower the costs of energy, as Chris Mortimer has spoke about. We will look at natural gas as well. And this will reduce household electricity bills by 50%, which means that there would be more disposable income in the pockets of all Bahamians. And yes, hotels would be able to lower their rates, thereby attracting more tourists. It is estimated that once this is done, there would be at least, listen to this, $18 million more dollars a month in the pockets of Bahamians, which would generate a lot of economic activity. Of course, there are persons who will be too happy because every month they receive a check for roughly $25 million from the government for providing oil to BEC. My friends, this is the reason why all of the electricity bills have been so high for far too long, and successive governments have held the Bahamians financially hostage to these people who have enriched themselves beyond measure. Exchange control. I want you to listen to this. We need to liberalize exchange control, which will not only increase economic activity, but also help to lessen the chances of a future devaluation of the Bahamian dollar. The plan is thus: over a 5-year period, we want to dollarize the economy by allowing all Bahamians to have US dollar accounts and repatriate their US dollars and be allowed to invest their hard-earned money in any country in which they can get the best return. Furthermore, direct foreign investors, the hotels and the banks will be encouraged to pay employees and their local bills in US dollars. All of these measures will increase not only the level of the central bank's US dollar reserves, but also the amount of US dollars in the hands and pockets of Bahamians. Additionally, Bahamians will be able to borrow money at much lower rates of interest, as is in the case in the US and Canada today. Look here, man, it makes a big difference, if you're able to pay 3% on your mortgage as opposed to paying 8%. That's a big difference. Ladies and gentlemen, under a DNA government, there will be a national lottery. The profits from the lottery will be used specifically to finance education, healthcare, and sports and culture. Additionally, some monies will be set aside to help capitalize a venture capital fund that will be exclusively used to help fund entrepreneurs and small to medium-sized businesses. The Bahamas needs a national lottery that allows everyone to win, and not just a chosen few. The DNA government will privatize BEC, or whatever they call it today, water and sewage, Bahamas Air, and ZNS. Don't cut me off. I paid for it. But unlike the previous administrations, all Bahamians will have a chance to buy shares in these companies and indeed be the majority shareholders. Not only will the sale of these legacy burdens help to reduce the fiscal deficit and the national debt, but because for once they will be efficiently managed, they will become profitable and make money for their Bahamian shareholders. In the Bahamas today, 90% of the banking sector is foreign-owned. The same applies to all the major hotels. Under a DNA government, the central bank will be intensely encouraged to allow qualified Bahamians to have equity or ownership in both the retail and offshore banking sector. Indeed, Bahamians will be offered the same incentives as foreign investors currently enjoy for investment in the tourism industry. If a Bahamian group has the wherewithal to own a hotel or a casino or a cruise ship, then he or she will be encouraged to do so and afforded all of the incentives, subsidies, tax breaks as all other direct foreign investors have had and continue to enjoy. It's long overdue that we get our slice of the economic pie instead of the crumbs. My fellow Bahamians, if all of the incentives that I have just outlined will lower the cost of living for all Bahamians and effectively increase your incomes and standard of living, you will also have a bigger ownership stake in your own country and be able to enjoy the economic benefits of ownership. Doing business will become easier. And every Bahamian who's prepared to work hard will have the opportunity to make an honest living. And for once, the groundwork will be laid for young Bahamian entrepreneurs to have a chance to pursue their dreams and for all Bahamians to live the Bahamian dream. You know, it's Nelson Mandela who famously said that education is the most powerful weapon that you can use to change the world. Under a DNA government, Bahamians can anticipate a transformation from the consumerism, particularly after an expansion and conversion of the University of the Bahamas and the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institution on Andros and Grand Bahama, with student housing, job creation, and population migration within the first and second term. Through public and private partnership, the DNA will invest in the development of flagship schools for film and creative arts, and science and technology in Grand Bahama, marine and agriculture science in Andros, and schools of business, medicine, and government and political science in the capital. Doing this not only trains a workforce that builds this economy as opposed to another economy, but also attracts foreign students who alone will add millions of dollars to our economy. A good education should be a right for all Bahamians and not just for the privileged few. In keeping with the DNA's mantra that our greatest resource is the Bahamian people, it is the DNA's goal for all Bahamians to have free education up to the University of the Bahamas. Have faith in the DNA's plan for Family Island development and effective local government agencies in place to assist in this process of development, as the DNA will move systematically to begin investing in substantive infrastructural development and job creation initiatives on the Family Islands, with the aim of encouraging and making it attractive for Family Island residents to remain on their respective islands, to assist with the island's development. It will, at the same time, make it feasible for other Family Island residents who have moved to New Providence in search of job opportunities to return to their native island. This gradual population shift and decentralization of the population from New Providence back to the Family Islands would not only go a long way in Family Island redevelopment, but it will also play a significant role in alleviating the stresses and social chaos that come along with overpopulation. Along with job creation, this move will have a drastic impact on incidents of crime in our society. Speaking of crime, although crime is not a political issue, it is the government's fundamental responsibility to protect its citizens. The DNA will tackle crime head on. We'll take no prisoners. There will be zero tolerance for crime. We are committed to ensuring that we become a disciplined society. We will sweat the small stuff. We will be a society that can truly be called paradise and not one paralyzed by fear, where there will be consequences for your crime. And yes, we will enforce the death penalty and make the law reflect that if you commit murder against anyone, not just a selected few, that you will be sentenced to death. There'll be no bail for murderers. None. We will let the commissioner and his force carry out their duties without political interference. Have faith in us that we have the political will and fortitude to begin stabilizing this country out of this crime problem. The DNA is a reflection of the diverse groups that make up the Bahamas. We recognize, therefore, that while criminal laws are not being upheld, so are our country's labor laws. Foreign employers who feel entitled in their treatment of Bahamian workers usually mimic the continued disrespect shown to the Bahamian worker by their government. Not only because within the DNA there are unionists and those who uphold labor laws as employers, but have faith that a DNA government will tackle a hands-on approach to our workers' welfare. No longer will we ask the workers of this nation to pull themselves up by their bootstraps unless we first give them boots with straps. For far too long, they have struggled to prove themselves as upwardly mobile, hardworking, and obedient individuals without getting or having the necessary support system in place to assist them. The time has come when workers of this country and the leaders who are elected to represent their interests will be seen as partners with the government and not as adversaries to the government. The DNA government will come to power looking to foster an environment where the individual and corporate productivity are equal with self-worth and where the love of work is esteemed as a national obligation. Therefore, the party will, among other things, ensure that the workers' interests outweigh politics. Have faith that your DNA government will begin to honor the tripartite agreement that other governments have failed to honor. We will work to include union organizations in the training and or orientation of public service employees, facilitate the delivery of training and upgrading the workers at the soon-to-be University of the Bahamas, and BTVI, appoint promotion boards with union representation to consider promotion for workers in their bargaining units and invite leaders of unions to have observer status at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meetings and other international meetings where the decisions and outcome impact workers' rights. It is time to pay some respect to the workers of this country for their valuable consideration to national development and to the development of the dream of all who come to our shores and use their labor for profit and gain. It is high time you reap the fruit of your labor. You have toiled long enough. If no one else will give you that respect, workers of this nation, have faith that the DNA will. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, in the days to come, it is going to be very important that you take charge of your future. And don't give up. Become the captain of your fate. And do not give in. Now is certainly not the time to huddle around the shadows of our homes, around the water coolers, or on the telephone lines, or on talk shows. It's not time to complain and point fingers to who should be blamed and be ashamed of the current state of our beloved Bahama land. You know, truth be told, we are all to blame. We all carry an equal load for how we allow the ship to be steered. We have been divided by mere colors. We have been brainwashed to believe that because of our political ties, we cannot work together to move this nation forward. That somehow one group is smarter than the other. That somehow we cannot coexist. Truly, you don't believe that. It's not too late, to shake off that force of complacency that has brought us oppression, insensitivity, ignorance, bitterness, and false impression that you don't deserve better. And so you should not receive better. The Bahamas is ripe with leaders, waiting for a horn to sound, to arise from the ashes of doubt with a fearless desire to bring better, brighter days to one of the greatest nations of the world. Today, more than ever before, Bahamians must be willing, without any reservation, to stand up, even if there is no surety that others will stand with you and steer the Bahamas away from treacherous waters to solid ground. Today, not tomorrow, is the time that we pick up from where our forefathers left off and fight for our country, where our children are truly the beneficiaries of our good work. Tomorrow is indeed too late. If we are not willing to resurrect the 1967 vision of the Bahamas today, then we should be prepared to live aimlessly forever. If we not see the urgency to steer the ship toward the lighthouse, we will run aground. If Bahamians are too scared to fight for their birthright, then rest assured, someone else will take it from you. If you refuse to uphold our democracy, then you would have denounced your Bahamian citizenship. There's no doubt that we have the power now to steer the ship. Our adversaries and their unsuccessful tactics validate that we do. Every day since May 12, 2011, 5 years ago, you have validated that the Bahamian people have the power to shift its alliance from one party in favor of another. You have the power to make life easier for your little boy, your little girl, all children of the Bahamas, and their children, and their children's children. You have the power to restore faith in your leadership. You have the power to realign our nation the way God destined it to be. You, and only you have the power on who wins and who loses, who will rise and who will fall. You have the final say on election day. You will remind the Bahamas, this region, and soon the world, that the power of the people is greater than the people in power. That power is now. So join us to make history. Tonight you are one vote away from Bahamian ownership, one vote away from not being second-class citizens in your own country. The DNA is ready. The Bahamas is ready. We are taking our country back. The time has come for Bahamians to stand up and rise up, mighty people, and stand for what is rightfully yours. Shake loose the bonds of mediocrity and fear. The future, your children's future is here. It has begun. It has been revealed in front of you tonight. Your future's begun, Bahamas. Your future has begun now. May God continue to bless each and every one of you. May God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Good night.